last time I had the privilege and the schus to participate in the annual tisha event by the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation was July in the year 2001. 2 years is not a very long time in the span of things, but yet in those 2 years, since July 2001, we are living in a very different world. And we're all aware of that, because as you all know, there's something that happened between then and now, and that was September 11th. And September 11th has changed this world, and it has impacted on every single one of us. It is almost as though that time, before September 11th, was a time of innocence. We felt secure, we felt safe, we felt here in America that we could never be attacked. That sense of innocence is gone. We now have a sense of being vulnerable, that we don't feel as safe and secure as we once felt. We are reminded of this so many times in the course of our day. Any time that you board an airplane and you have to go through the extra security measures that are ubiquitous in every single airport across this country, we're reminded of it. When you're asked to take off your shoes, lest you be a shoe bomber, you are reminded of it. And we also know that contrary to what the Department of Homeland Security may be telling us, duct tape will not save us. The question is, what will? What can we do to protect ourselves? So Chazal, in several different places, have told us what we can use as a protection from the dangers that lurk in the world. The Gemara says on the pasuk, "V'asim dvarai beficha u'v'tzel yadi kisisicha." Darshan is the Gemara, "V'asim dvarai beficha zu Torah." That the words "V'asim dvarai beficha" is referring to limud haTorah. U'v'tzel yadi kisisicha. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says that in the shadow of my palm I have covered you and I have protected you. Zu gemilas chasadim. This is referring to gemilas chasadim, doing kindness, doing chesed, being kind and nice to people. Lo lamedcha, says the Gemara. Shekol mi shehu eisek b'Torah u'gemilas chasadim. Any person that learns and practices loving kindness, gemilas chasadim, Zeiche v'yoshev b'tziloi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He merits the protection of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Writes the Chafetz Chaim in his Sefer Avas Chesed that a person can expect the personal protection of the Rebbeinu Shalom if he learns Torah and performs Chesed. And when we hear that by performing Chesed we can in fact merit the divine protection of God Himself, we feel fairly confident, because there's one thing that we as a community and we as individuals are seemingly very good at, and that is we're very good at practicing chesed. We are a nation as a whole and as individuals that excel when it comes to doing chesed, to doing favors, to being kind, to being generous, being magnanimous. That is our hallmark of the nation. So when we hear that chesed is the protective shield that the Rebbeinu Shalom offers us, we have a sense of confidence. But unfortunately, there is still something lacking. And that is because the Rebbeinu Shalom wants from us not merely chesed, but the Rebbeinu Shalom wants from us ahavas chesed. There's a difference between chesed and ahavas chesed. Doing kind deeds and ahavas chesed, the love of chesed. That is what the Navi Micha informs us when he writes the pasuk, Higid lecha Adam. The Navi says, I'm going to tell you, Ma Toiv, what is good for you, Uma Hashem Dairish Mimcha, and what does the Rebbeinu Shalom ask from you? What does the Rebbeinu demand from you? Ki'im aseis chesed, aseis mishpat va'ahavas chesed. The Navi tells us that the Rebbeinu Shalom is asking from us aseis mishpat, practicing justice, va'ahavas chesed, and the love of doing good deeds. The Chafetz Chaim points out in that Sefer that the Navi appears to telling us something new. Higi l'cha adam matayv. It is as though the Navi is telling Rabbi side, gentlemen, I have something new to tell you. Higi l'cha adam. I'm telling you something new. And that is what? Kimaseis mishpat va'amas chesed. Ask the Chafetz Chaim, what's new in that pasuk? Don't we know already from the rest of Torah that one must do justice and practice chesed? What's the chiddush? Higi l'cha adam. What's the novel information that the Navi is sharing with us? Writes the Chafetz Chaim in very ominous words. Hayrel lanu hanavi inyan gadol u'mechudash. The Navi has told us something novel, something unique, something new, something that we did not know before this pasuk, and that is shekimat anu kulan nichshalin bazeh. This is something that unfortunately all of us, even this wonderful Klal Yisrael, nichshalin bazeh, we are lacking. And that is, it's not merely sufficient to do chesed, but you have to love to do it. You have to want to do it. You have to run to do it. You have to look at it as a golden opportunity that you have to run for. This is what the Navi is telling us. Asais mishpat. When it comes to justice, it's merely sufficient to do it. But when it comes to chesed, there's more that's demanded. And that's ahavas chesed. Love to do it. Run to do it. Want to do it. Have a passion to do it. Merely practicing it is not sufficient. Chesed and ahavas chesed. There's a difference. Let me demonstrate to you with a common scenario the difference between chesed and ahavas chesed. It's a Sunday morning, and the parade of Mushulachim begins. You're sitting peacefully in your house, and the doorbell rings. A Meshulach comes to the door collecting for some institution or for himself. You write him out a check, you send him on his way. 15 minutes later, another doorbell, another Meshulach, another check, and another check, and another check. This can go on almost an entire morning. Finally, you go out of the house and you run some errands. You're away from the house an hour and a half, and you're riding back to your home, and you're pulling in up your block. And lo and behold, you see two Meshulachim leaving your house. And you think to yourself, thank God, it's my lucky day. I missed them. Yes, you performed chesed, but another 2 or 3 checks, I could live with not having to write out those checks. Now let me tell you what ahavas chesed is. There was a Yid, a Jew, who once came into Rav Pam, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. And he came to Rav Pam and he discussed with him a worthy cause. And he asked Rav Pam if Rav Pam could contact his own Talmidim, his own students, that they should contribute generously to this cause. And Rav Pam looked at the man and he says, I would love to help you. It's a wonderful cause, but I can't do it. Because I just went to these very people a couple weeks ago. And I asked them for money for another institution, for another cause. You can only go back to the well so many times. I'm terribly sorry, but I can't help you. The man walks out. 10 minutes later, a Talmud of Rav Pam walks in, and he sees Rav Pam sitting at his desk with a pile of index cards. And he's going to the index cards one after another, one after another, one after another. And there are tears rolling down Rav Pam's face. And the Talmud asks him, what is so depressing about seeing index cards with the names of your students on them? And Rav Pam said, I just sent out this man, and I told him I couldn't help him. And I went through my cards, and I came to the conclusion, I can't help him. But he was crying. That's ahavas chesed. That's what the Navi wants from us. That's what the Navi is asking from us. You hear a story like that and you say to yourself, yeah, that's Rapam. Rapam was a tzaddik. Rapam was a special individual. Anyone who had the privilege of ever meeting him, of ever seeing him, knows what type of person he was. He was a tzaddik. That's not me. I'm a regular guy. I'm a regular Jew. That level is beyond my scope. I beg to differ. And I think I'll prove it to you. Because it is axiomatic in Judaism that the Rebbeinu Shalom does not demand from an individual that which he cannot do. And here are the words of the Navi. Ma Hashem doiresh mimcha. What does Rebbeinu Shalom demand from you? Rosh Chodesh Hirsch writes that the word doiresh always implies, has the connotation, has the nuance that asking for something that exists, a capacity that exists. If the Rebbeinu Shalom says to us, Ma Hashem doiresh mimcha, that's telling us that this capacity of Avas Chesed resides within each and every Jew. And we have to probe and we have to search until we find that capacity. But it's there. It is there within each and every one of us. The Rapams and the simple Jews. Let me tell you a story about a simple Jew. This is a story that involves a simple Jew and the Rebbe Rabbunim. But this is not a story about the Rebbe Rabbunim. This is a story about a simple Jew who was an innkeeper. And the Rebbe Rabbunim once on his travels passed through this city and stayed at this man's inn. And the innkeeper fed Rabbunim, and he started telling him his tale of woes, of how business was bad, how he didn't have any more customers, how no one ever stopped through anymore, and how the business was on the verge of bankruptcy. And finally, there's a knock on the door. And the man thinks to himself, a customer. The innkeeper goes to the door, and the man stands at the door on a cold and rainy night, and he tells the innkeeper, he says, please, I'm asking you a favor. I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I need a place to stay, and I need something to eat. Can I have a meal and sleep with you? And the man says, yes. But he says, but there's only one catch. I have no money. I'm asking you to do me a favor. Put me up for free. The man thinks to himself, finally a live customer, and he can't pay. The man sits down, he gives him to eat. In the meantime, Rabbunim is taking in the entire scene. Finally, the man says, please, one more favor. I'm cold, the cold is in my bones. Please, a glass of vodka. A glass of vodka to warm me up. Okay, I'll give you a glass of vodka. The innkeeper goes to the barrel, pours a cup of vodka, and pours it on the floor. He pours another glass of vodka and pours it on the floor. And 3 and 4 times, until all of a sudden he pours it and he says, now. And he gives the man his drink. And the Rebbe Rabbunim, who's taking in this entire scene, he says, why did you pour the first 5 glasses on the floor? You complain you're so poor. Pouring vodka on the floor is not going to help the situation. And the man said to the Rebbe Rabbunim, because I knew I had a golden opportunity here. I was doing a Yirah Chesed. But when I poured that first glass of vodka, it was with anger. It was with resentment. It was not with the spirit of generosity. And I said to myself, you're going to have a chesed over here. You have an opportunity for a chesed, and you're going to blow it. You're going to blow it because you're not going to give this with a full heart. You're going to give this begrudgingly. So I poured the first glass, and I said, no, begrudgingly. Second glass, no, it's still resentment. Third glass, I'm still not going to have it until finally, now the glass of vodka. Now the chesed. Now the avas chesed. Now I can do it. Mind you, that's not a story about the Rebbe Rabbunim. That's a story about an innkeeper. an innkeeper just like you and me. But he had within him that capacity that resides within each and every one of us. And that is the capacity for Avas Chesed. Chesed is different than most other mitzvahs. It's almost uniquely different than most other mitzvahs. That is the only way that we can explain that which is the primary example that the Torah gives us in the story of Chesed, the story of Avram Avinu, the story of Avram and the guests. Remember the story, Avram Avinu had just undergone his bris milah. He's 99 years old. The Rebbeinu Shalom has Rahmanas on him and doesn't want to trouble Avram, this Ish HaChesed, this man of generosity, the man whose house was open to every wayfarer. He doesn't want to impose on him. And therefore it's hot. It's terribly hot. There are no travelers. And the Rebbeinu Shalom sees that Avram Avinu is pained. He's distressed by the fact that he can't host anybody. So the Rebbeinu Shalom miraculously provides 3 guests, Malachim, angels in the form of human beings. And Avraham Avinu runs to go and to provide them with food and drink. Now let me ask you, would it not have been understandable of Avraham Avinu to say, listen, I'm sick, I'm tired, I've just undergone a circumcision, I've just undergone an operation, I need a few days off. We know how we feel when we say, I need an off week. You know that feeling when you've had a terribly hard week, nothing has gone wrong, right? You're falling from your feet. It's Thursday night, and you remember that you promised and you agreed to have company for that Shabbos. And there you are, it's Thursday night, you're plucking chickens, you're falling from your feet. But you have to because you promised the company. And then Thursday night the phone rings and it's the company and they say, oh, we're terribly sorry, but we have to cancel. And you hang up the phone and you say, thank you, God. I needed that. But Avraham Avinu is not like that. He's distressed that there are no orchim. But why should he be? Do you feel bad that today you can't make Kiddush? If it's not Shabbos, you don't make Kiddush. If it's not Pesach, you don't eat matzah. If it's not Sukkot, you don't sit in the Sukkot. Do you feel bad that today's not Shabbos? Never. I can't make Kiddush today. I can't eat matzah today. Of course not. If it's Shabbos, you must make Kiddush. If it's Pesach, you must eat matzah. And if they're guests, then I'll feed them. And if they're no guests, then I don't have to feed them. Writes Rav Moshe Feinstein in his Yissocher Frand Chumash that you see from over here that Chesed is different. Kiddush must be only made on Shabbos, but Chesed is different. Because Chesed is not for them. Chesed is for you. And that is how Chesed is unique. Because I have to give. I, as a human being, have to give. We think that you need money, you need help, therefore I must give you. No, that is incorrect. It is a myth. It's backwards. It is, I have to give, therefore you need. Do we hear that? Do we appreciate that? The institution of poverty that has plagued this world, plagued, I use that word in quotes, poverty. The institution of poverty is there because people have to help, because you have to help, because you have to give. This is what the Gemara means. More than what the balabayis, the wealthy person, does for the pauper. The pauper does for the wealthy person. Because I have to be a giver. Because I have to give. That's why Chesed is different. Our souls need to give. Just like our bodies need to eat, our souls need to give. You get up in the morning and you get hungry, you say to yourself, what am I going to have for breakfast? some point in the day, what am I going to eat? That question that we ask ourselves every single day. What is there to eat? What can I eat? Because your body needs nourishment. Your soul needs to give. It is as though you should get up every single day and you should say, how can I give? To whom can I give? Because human beings have to give. It is why we were put on this earth. The Rebbeinu Shalom took our souls and sent them down to earth. And he told us, perfect yourselves. Become like me. We must emulate the ways of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Imitate Yodei. We must be like him. That's how we achieve our perfection. That's how we get close to God. God is the essence of a giver. Olam Chesed Yiboneh. This world did not have to be created. God created this world because he wanted to give. And he says the best thing, the most precious thing that a soul can have is to come down and to give and to be like God, because that's how you achieve closeness with God. And that's what your soul desires. That's what your soul needs. Our soul needs to become close to God. We do that by giving. It's a life's work. We come into this world as little babies. And all babies think about is themselves. They want to be fed. They want to be changed. They want to be taken care of. They wake us up in the middle of the night. They don't care whether we've gotten sleep or not gotten sleep. That's what a baby is. A baby is the most self-absorbed being that there is. The Yiddish proverb says that every baby comes into this earth with his hands clenched as if to say, I want it all, I want to take it all. We come into this world as takers. It is the tachlis and the purpose and the fulfillment of every human being to become a giver rather than a taker. That is, I think, what we say at the bris of every single Jewish male. Zeh hakaton gadol yeh. We're not merely referring to physical stature. We're telling that little baby, you're now a katan. You're self-absorbed. You only think about yourself. Become a gadol, a great person, the definition of the Torah. What's a gadol? A gadol is many things. We all know what a gadol is. We've all seen gedolim. They're people of great erudition. They're people of great yiras shamayim. But you know what else they are? They are people that think about others. That's the measure of greatness. Vayigdal Moshe, and Moshe became great. Vayetze el echav vayar b'sivloisam. He went out. He could have sat in the lap of luxury in the palace. He didn't have to care about his suffering brethren, but he went out. Vayigdal Moshe, he became great by going out. And that's what we say to this baby. Little baby, you're now a baby. You're a katan. You're going to be like this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But at some point in your life, don't only think about yourself. Don't be so self-absorbed. Be a giver and not a taker. And the greater giver you are, the greater person you are. Let me tell you a story that is literally breathtaking. It's a story about Rav Gedalia Moshe Goldman, who was to become the Rebbe of Zevil. During the war, he was in a labor camp. Not a concentration camp, a labor camp. He was sentenced to hard labor. And there he was in the camp, working miserable hours, back-breaking work. One day, he gets called to the commandant's office. The commandant calls him and another man. He tells them, you're free to go. You're being released. Sign these papers and you can leave. The only problem was, it was Shabbos. And now the Rebbe, the Gedalia Moshe Goldman, had an internal debate. Can I sign the papers at Shabbos? Of course I can sign the papers. It's pikuach nefesh. It's a matter of saving a human life. We can desecrate the Shabbos to save a human life. And then he said to himself, but maybe not. This is not a matter of life and death. If I don't get out of here now, I'm not going to die. So I'll be here another 2 years, another 4 years, but eventually I will get out. It's not pikuach nefesh. It's not a matter of life and death. He tells the commandant, I'm not signing. It's Shabbos. The commandant says to him, you're not signing, you can sit here and rot. And he pushes the paper to the other Jew, an older Jew, a sickly Jew. And he says to him, sign the papers and you're free. The man says, I can't sign, it's Shabbos. Whereupon Rabbi Gedalia Moshe Goldman pops up and says, I'll sign for him. Let him go. And the commandant looks at him and says, are you crazy? He says, you just told me you can't sign, it's Shabbos. How can you not sign for yourself and sign for him? He said, for me, I'm younger, I'm healthy, I'm stronger. If I stay in here, I'm not going to die. This man is weak and he's old and he's sickly. For him, it's a matter of life and death. I'll sign for him. The commandant was so overwhelmed with that selflessness, that unbelievable act of total selflessness, that he said, you're free to go. That's a gadol. That's a giver. That's not a taker. That's a person who is godlike. That's a person who's cleaving to God. Because he's a giver, not a taker. And if you view chesed in this light, that you're doing more for yourself than you're doing for anybody else, you will shield yourself from one of the great occupational hazards of chesed, and that is resentment. How many times have been nice to people and kind to people, and they show no appreciation? Sometimes it's even worse than that. They pay us back with bad for the good that we gave them. And we say to ourselves, look what I did for this person. And look what I get in return. Not even a thank you. If we can realize that chesed is for us and not for them, we'll never feel like that. That is what really happened in that other famous story of chesed in the Torah. The story of Rivka. The story of Eliezer coming to get a wife for Yitzchak. And he comes to the city with his camels and with his servants. And he makes up a sign and he says, the girl and the woman that will come and offer to feed me, and not only feed me, but give drinks to my camels, that's the one to be the wife of Yitzchak. And we all know the story. Rivka decides and offers not only to give Eliezer to drink, but to give his camels to drink. Now, according to at least one medrash, Rivka was 3 years old at the time. Now, picture the scene. Here you have Eliezer, and he has servants. And they're doing what? They're sitting around and they're schmoozing. And this little girl, who's 3 years old, is giving drink to camels. Now, mind you, these are camels. These are not parakeets. They're known for their capacity to drink. And she's pouring, and she's pouring, and she's going back to the well, and back to the well, and back to the well. And meanwhile, Eliezer, with his servants, doesn't lift a finger. Why didn't Rivka say, what's wrong with this picture? I'm 3 years old. I'm more than happy to help you. But you could at least get up and at least pour a couple pitchers of water yourself? Here, take your pitchers. I've done my share. You do the rest. No. No word of resentment. Nothing. And Eliezer is convinced. This is the wife of Yitzchak. because this is the wife that is going to fulfill the role of Sarah. This is the wife that's going to be the mother of Klal Yisrael. This is the wife that understands that the giver always gives more than the taker. I can't feel resentment because I am never, ever getting the short end of the stick. And the next time such a thing happens to you, the next time the person that moves on your block, and you start schmoozing with the fellow, and you say to him, well, how are you? Where do you work? Well, I work here. Where do you work? Oh, I work there. I work in the same place. The neighbor says to you, would you mind if I got a ride with you? I only work a couple blocks away. And you say, sure, I'm a Baal Chesed. Sure, I'll take you. And this goes on week after week, month after month. And all of a sudden you begin to ask, why doesn't this guy ever offer to drive? Has he ever heard of the institution called carpool? I've been taking, and he doesn't even offer. He never offers to drive. He doesn't even offer to pay tolls. He doesn't even offer to pay gas. And as the weeks and months go by, you feel more resentment. This guy is literally taking me for a ride. And then you say to yourself, I know what's going to happen. Purim is coming. That's what he's waiting for. He is going to give me a shalach manas that is going to end all shalach manas. Maybe he's even going to give me a car for shalach manas. And then Purim comes and he knocks on your door. And there in his hands, a pineapple and a bottle of Plum Royale. And you slam the door and you go to your wife and you say to her, the no goodnik, every single day I take him, no carpool, no gas, no tolls, Plum Royale, that's what I get. And your wife says to me, Hugh, it's your fault, because you're a shmata. Because you're a doormat, because you're always doing this for other people, and you never protect yourself, and that's why people take advantage of you. No, you're not a shmata. You're a Baal Chesed. And no one's taking advantage of you. This person has to be a mensch. That's another discussion. But you're not a shmata. You're going to get olam haba. Because it's selfless. It's pure chesed. And you become godlike. God doesn't get anything in return either. And you become closer to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And your neshama fuses with him. You're not losing it all. The Chafetz Chaim, perhaps sensing that the aforementioned arguments about being close to God, about achieving one's tachlis, about achieving one's fulfillment, perhaps that's not going to make the argument of chesed for everyone. So the Chafetz Chaim speaks in practical terms, and he devotes several chapters in his Sefer to all the goodness that one is going to get for performing chesed. The Chafetz Chaim writes that because of chesed, the rains will come in their time. Because of chesed, the Chafetz Chaim writes, one will be zeich and merit to have wonderful children. Because of chesed, a person will be safe in the Yetzer Hara. Because of chesed, when you may become a person that's in need, you will be repaid for the chesed that you did for others when they needed it. 2 or 3 chapters devoted for this. And finally, in summation, the Chafetz Chaim quotes a Tana de Be'eliyo. The Tana de Be'eliyo says on the pasuk, "Ubo elecha kol habrachos ha'ela v'hisigucha." That all the brachas that the Torah mentions will come upon you. If you will listen to the voice of the Rebbeinu Shalom, says the Tana de Be'eliyo. What does the pasuk mean? That you will be zeicha to this if you listen to the words of Hashem, says the Tana de Be'eliyo. U'mahem darkei shamayim. What are the ways of the Rebbeinu Shalom? So who Rav Chesed? What the Chafetz Chaim is telling us over here is that chesed is the mother lode of blessing. You tap into chesed, the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to pay you back. It's literally a windfall. The Chafetz Chaim knows human natures. And the Chafetz Chaim knows that people respond positively to windfalls. We see it all the time in our times. That's the only way I can understand the phenomenon of the Powerball lottery. You know what the Powerball lottery is? That's when a bunch of states get together and have this massive lottery. And week after week, as no one wins, the jackpot grows until it can grow into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And when that happens, invariably, people will line up to buy a ticket for the Powerball lottery. Now, I don't understand something about people. You can buy, in most states in this country, you can buy a ticket or a lottery on any given week for $3 or $4 million. Apparently, that does not do it for most people. Me personally, I could do very well with $4 million. But apparently, all these people that line up for hours to buy that ticket for the $340 million, that inspires people. $3 million, you keep it. $340 million, now you got me interested. Why is that? Because people know a windfall when they see it. Chesed is that windfall. Chesed is that mother lode. Uvo eilecha kol habrachis ha'ele v'hisigucha. That's what the Chafetz Chaim is telling us. And one last incentive before we go further. One last chesed motivator. And that is the Baal Chesed gets treated differently by the Rebbeinu Shalom. He gets treated differently by God. The Rebbeinu Shalom almost bends the rules. Has a different set of rules for people that do chesed. You know, a Yid once came to the Chafetz Chaim and he told him that he needs a bracha for Parnas. And the Chafetz Chaim asked him, what do you do for a living? And he said, I sell boots to the Russian army. Now, do you think that that's a great contract selling boots to the Russian army? So the Chafetz Chaim says, what's the problem? So the Yid says, because you know how they are, the Russian army in those days, the days of the Tsars. You know how they are. I sell them the boots. They have an inspector. He looks at the pair of boots, and that's no good. That's defective. So he says to the Chafetz Chaim, you know what I do? And he says this sheepishly. He says to the Chafetz Chaim, kabar. Kabar, in Russian, at least then, meant a bribe. I slipped the inspector a bribe. And then he accepts my boots. The Chafetz Chaim told him, you know, you have trouble with boots. We're going to have trouble one day with our mitzvahs. We're going to go up to Shamayim, and we're going to think that we're in good shape. We have been from a Yidden, observant Yidden all our lives. We have davened thousands of times. We have made thousands, hundreds of thousands of brachas. We have learned hours and hours and hours. The Rebbeinu Shalom is going to be very happy with us. But there's an inspector in Shamayim as well. And that inspector is going to look at our Shemoneh Esreis, and he's going to say, that's a Shemoneh Esrei. The 18-minute Shacharis, the bracha that you mumble the last 3 words of the bracha because you're so intent on eating. I'm sorry, reject that, no bracha, no learning, no. Except there's a kabar in Shamayim, the Chafetz Chaim told. There's a way of getting Rebbeinu Shalom to look differently at you. And that is chesed. You get judged differently. The There's a lot of things that will pass inspection. If you can quote, grease the wheels in Shamayim as well. It's wonderful. It's wonderful chesed. So why don't we do it? And the answer is, I think, in part, because I'm sure everybody in this room knows a Baal Chesed. You know someone that will give a shirt off their back. And you say to yourself, yeah, I know that person, but that's not me. You know, I'm a nice guy, but I'm not like that. And I can't be like that. That's just not me. And I'd like to say that all of us in this room or in this audience, we may not all become Bikiyim B'Shas. We may not all be able to master Shas and Shulchan Aruch. That depends on gifts that some of us don't have. We're not capable of that. But every person is capable of being that Baal Chesed, that Oiv Chesed. That's what the Navi told us. It's an easy business to get into. The Chesed business. No capital is needed. No building. No customer list. You know, you hear it all the time on the radio. Offers to get into this business. You go ahead, you call 1-800-so-and-so, and you're going to make a fortune. I'll teach you how to do real estate. I'll teach you how to do marketing. They'll have business us galore. All you have to do is call 1-800-so-and-so and pay $13.99 for the person's tapes or books or whatever. Get yourself into that business. You don't need $13.99. You don't even have to know the 800 number. There are cheseds under our noses. I'm telling you, you and I, each and every one of us, can become that person. And the other reason I think that we don't live like that is because we have this tremendous fear. And that is that we won't be happy. That if we'll be constantly giving, we won't have a life for ourselves. And I won't be happy. And we all want to be happy. But the irony is that the opposite is true. The bigger giver you are, the happier you are. And the more self-centered a person is, the less happy he is. The more you're into yourself, the more things bother you. Because you think the world revolves around you. And everything has to go your way. And you're upset, and you're depressed, and you're annoyed, and you're aggravated because you think, as kumpmir, I deserve it, I want it. The giving person, the personality that's a giver, is more happy. He's not. The world doesn't surround around himself. There are less things to upset him. That's so emblematic, I think, of American society. American society is so ultimately and completely and absolutely self-absorbed. The people are constantly getting upset about the shtuyot, the trivialities of life. So how do we get there? How do we get there? We're convinced. We're convinced intellectually. But how do we do it practically? So I have a couple of suggestions. And that is, you act the part. You act the part as if you were that Ohev Chesed. And you say, that's hypocritical. That's not being honest. No. That's the way the Torah told us to do everything. Because the Torah knows the profound wisdom of human beings, and that is that a person is profoundly influenced by the way you act If on Pesach you drink fine wine like a free man, and you recline in your chair like a free man, and you act the part of a free man, and you act the part of the king, then the Torah tells us, "Ha'odam nifal kafi pulosov." You act in a certain way, you practice it until it becomes part of you. And that's what we have to do. We have to act as though, in the beginning, we have to act as though this is indeed a golden opportunity. We have to run for the opportunity. The Mashiach comes to the door. From now on, from this day forward, when the Mashiach comes to the door, you open the door with a broad smile, and you say to him, "Shalom Aleichem, vos machta yid, how are you? Have a seat. Can I offer you a drink? How's your family back in Eretz Yisrael?" You act as though this is a golden opportunity, and you keep on doing this over and over again until it finally sinks in to our skulls and to our brains and to our hearts that this is indeed a golden opportunity. There's a revolution that's going to happen this Tisha B'Av. And that is, Mishulachim across this country are not going to know what hit them. They're going to walk into our doors, and they're going to be treated not like schleppers and not like beggars. Trust me, no one wants to go around door to door and get dollars and quarters or less. You think people want to do this? People are going to knock, Mishulachim are going to knock on the door, and they're going to get offered drinks, and they're going to get offered coffee, and they're going to offer tea. And they're going to say, "What happened to America? Is it in the water or something?" And the next time you you see somebody at a bus stop, or you see somebody waiting on a corner, you roll down your window and say, "Can I take you somewhere?" With a smile. And the next time you see somebody laden down with packages coming out of the supermarket, schlepping packages, you say, "Can I help you to your car?" And you act like that. You act like that for a week, for 2, for a month, for 4 months, for 6 months, and then all of a sudden, you know what happens to you and happens to me? We begin to change. We begin to change our mindset. And we get thinking in the terms of when we see somebody, it doesn't make a difference what they're wearing on their head, what kind of yarmulke they may be wearing, what kind of shirt they're wearing, whether it's blue or white or checkered or colored or whatever it is. But we're going to look at a human being and we're going to say, "What can I do for this person?" That's the revolution that we're proposing. That you look at people and you think, "What can I do?" And if we practice that and it becomes part of us, it's going to be so ingrained that it's going to be reactive, it's going to be instinctive. And let me tell you a story about instinctive chesed. This is a story that happened on December 27th, 2002. It happened in Eretz Yisrael, in the city of Hebron, in the Yeshivas Hesder in Hebron. And there they were serving, the Bochum were serving this Friday night meal in this yeshiva. And all the Bochum were in the dining room, and 4 Bochum had the duty of serving the rest of the boys in the yeshiva that night. One of the boys in that night, his name was Noam Apter, Zichroinai Livrocha. And as they're serving the soup, 2 Palestinian terrorists dressed as Israeli troops burst into that kitchen where they're serving, and they riddle them with bullets. And 3 Brochrim Loy Olenu dropped dead on the spot. But they didn't get Noam Apter. And now he was faced with a question. He had a gun on his side. What does he do? Does he try to shoot it out with the rest of the terrorists that have machine guns? Does he try to hide under the table? Or does he do something like run to the door that separates the kitchen and the dining room and lock the door and throw away the key that they can't get into the dining room, whereupon he is riddled with bullets and he dies right then and there. Now you tell me, do you think he went through this cheshbon? You think he went through, these are the options, which should I pick? There was no time to think. This was reactive. This was instinctive, because apparently that boy was so ingrained with this quality called, what can I do for somebody else, that in that moment of crisis his essence came out. And his essence was, what can I do for this person? That's what we have to start thinking. What can I do for somebody? And I have a practical suggestion. I have two practical suggestions. This new mentality that we're going to walk out of here today, on this day of Tisha B'Av, with the new mentality, what can I do for him? What can I do for her? Let it start with somebody in your family. We all have some family. They're under our noses. You look at your spouse and you say, what can I do for her? You walk in Sunday night, it's late, and the cholent pot is still standing there. Don't say to yourself, well, that's her job. You say, what can I do for her? What can I make her life easier? You do it. And you ask yourself, what can I do for him? How can I make his day a little easier? And if you don't have a spouse, but you have a father or a brother or a sister or a brother or a grandfather or a grandmother or an uncle or an aunt, but you have somebody. You're not living on an island. And you ask yourself, what can I do? That's how we become Oavei Chesed. That's what's supposed to happen to us today. And let's start a new program. Mimic unbelievable creative institution of Rav Meir Shapiro. And let's start a program called the Chesed Yomi. And just like every one of us, every male in this room has to ask himself, did I learn today? Because a Jew has to learn every day, a man has to learn every day, a man has to learn Torah every day. So every single being that's watching this has to say, a chesed a day. So Chafetz Chaim quotes us from the Zohar. That's what we have to do. You have to practice the mentality of what can I do. Now we start with a chesed a day. The chesed yomi. It goes hand in hand with the daf yomi. That's how we got out of Egypt. We got out of the Golus Mitzrayim. Chazal tell us with chesed. Chazal tell us, the Tana Be'Elio tells us that the Jews saw how desperate the situation was in Egypt. How can we get out of this bitter Golus? How we can get out of the decrepit situation? Say Chazal that the Jews in Egypt got together and they made a covenant among themselves. They made a bris. They made a bris and they said, we've got to practice chesed with each other. Says the Tana Be'Elio, the Rebbe saw that. He saw these desperate people, these lowly people, these oppressed, battered, smettered people, and he said, look at them. Look at these people that so desperately need chesed. And yet, they practice chesed with each other. These desperate people, these slaves, and they practice chesed. Ani shani kulay chesed. We, the Rebbeinu, that is the essence of chesed, the epitome of chesed. I'm not going to do chesed with them, and that's how they got out. They got out of Egypt because they did chesed with each other, because they were nice to each other. How can you be nice if you have nothing? You can be nice. Apparently you can be nice. And got it out of Mitzrayim. It stood as well in the Holocaust. The meat of chesed. The meat of sharing. Let me read you a short excerpt from a speech that was given by Howard Schultz. Howard Schultz is the chairman and CEO of the Starbucks Corporation. This was a speech that was given at the Columbia University School of Business. And this, in part, is what Howard Schultz said. Apparently, there was a group of people, of wealthy people, very wealthy people, that went to Israel. And among the sites that they saw in Israel, that they had a meeting with Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, soll gesund und stark sein, in the Mir Yeshiva. And this is the contents of that meeting. What we did not know was that Rabbi Finkel was severely afflicted with Parkinson's disease. He sat down at the head of the table, and naturally our inclination was to look away. We didn't want to embarrass him. We were all looking away when he asked us, "Gentlemen, what can we learn from the Holocaust?" He called on one fellow who did not know what to do. It was being like back in the 5th grade. You know, don't call on me. The guy said something benign like, "We will never forget." And the rabbi dismissed that. The rabbi was getting to call on somebody else, and we were all under the table with that sinking feeling, "Please, not me." Then he said, "Gentlemen, let me tell you the essence of the human spirit. As you know, during the Holocaust, the people were transported in the worst possible inhumane ways by cattle car. When they finally arrived at the camps and went to bed that night, only one person was given a blanket in the barracks. The person who was given the blanket had a decision to make. Am I going to push the blanket to 5 other people, or am I going to pull it toward myself so that I can stay warm?" And with that, Rabbi Finkel said, those people pushed the blanket. "And gentlemen," he said, "take your blanket, take it back to America, and push it to 5 other people." That is the essence of the human spirit. It is the essence of chesed. It is what saved us in Egypt. It is what stood us well in the Holocaust. And it is what will get us out of this long and bitter gullus. It's Tisha B'Av today. We're mourning the Beis Hamikdash. I tell you that if we practice chesed, and we do chesed, something is going to happen. And we're going to become from Ohavei Chesed to Ohavei Yisrael. Because when you give to other people, and it doesn't make a difference how they look or how they're dressed or any of those other things, but you keep on giving and giving and you're kind to other people, that engenders Avas Yisrael. That's the definition of Avas Yisrael. That's what the Ramban tells us on the Torah. Just treat people like you would want to be treated yourself. Want for them the best like you want from yourself. Don't worry about the emotions. That's Avas Yisrael. And that's going to get us ultimately out of this gullus. We do that. And Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. Chesed get treated differently by God. If one can say this expression, it is as though Chesed pulls on God's heartstrings. Kaviyachol. ever sent a child off to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel, a son to yeshiva, a girl to seminary? Do you remember the scene at the airport? Did you cry? Did you cry when your son or your daughter went off to Israel? Why did you cry? Why did you cry when you sent them off to Israel? Because you were scared. And they were scared. Because they're going to a far-off land and you're not going to see them for months. And you know the troubles that they may have. And there's not going to be anybody for them. And they're going to have to be Yom Tov alone, and Sukkot alone, and Rosh Hashanah alone. And who knows who's going to help them, who's going to be the shoulder to cry on when they need it, who's going to pick them up when they need it. You were scared. And if by some good fortune and good fate, your son or your daughter met somebody in Eretz Yisrael, somebody that took them in, somebody that was kind to them, somebody that invited them, somebody was there for them whenever they needed it, and that person got them through that year in Eretz Yisrael, and you just heard about their name, but you never met them. But if you were ever to meet that person, how would you feel towards that person? Wouldn't you want to shower him with goodness? Wouldn't you want to be kind to him? Wouldn't you want to repay him somehow for taking care of your precious little child? That's how God, Kaviyachol, feels. He sends us down to this world. He sends a neshama down. That's his children. We're his children. My neshama is his child. I'm his child. You're his child. He sent us down. It's a scary world out there. There's so many things that could go wrong. When people stretch out their hands and their homes to all those neshamas, you're helping God's Ben Yochidel. You're helping God's child. God likes that. He loves that. He feels good towards you. He's going to treat you differently. And he's going to shower you with gifts and kindness and brachas. Chesed, I'm telling you, that's what's going to do it. It got us out of Mitzrayim, and Amir Hashem, it's going to get us out of this bitter and long golus. B'bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, b'mheira of Yameinu Amen.
This year was presented by Rav Yissocher Frand Shlita.